Have you ever had an idea or a dream, something that brought you to the edge of your capacity, and you hit that wall of limitation and found yourself in that vulnerable pocket? And then this little voice pops up and it says something like, do you think you got this? Do you think you're capable? What will people think if you fail? I believe this to be the voice of fear, an expression of intuition hardwired through evolution, our fight or flight response, and it has one goal: to keep you alive. If you're being chased by a tiger, fear shows up and it says, pay attention, and it's probably wise to listen. Intuition, on the other hand, is there to help us thrive and to grow and to move us in the direction of our full potential. And I believe that there is a moment for both. We are never without a choice to either stay and stagnate or to grow and move forward. Fear is not meant to be the decision maker, but a consultant, not there to stop us from chasing that we desire so deeply. It is my belief that it is our relationship to fear that will determine your fate, not fear itself. I found myself on the edge of my personal capacity when I was 21. Admittedly, I was drunk in a pub in Ireland, and this pamphlet landed in the middle of the pub table. And I didn't know where I was going, I didn't know what I was doing, and I was lost like most 21-year-olds, and I was looking for something. And the pamphlet read, "The ultimate test of the human spirit," and I needed to know. So I opened it up, and it reads, "Transatlantic rowing race from Spain to the Caribbean in a 24-foot ocean rowing boat." And my mother's worst nightmare came true. I rowed with one other person, Paul Gleeson, who hails from Dublin, Ireland. We lived on freeze-dried food, boiled in a bag. We rowed through 2 hurricanes, a tropical storm, and we were at sea during the year of Hurricane Katrina, the worst recorded storm season to date. We went through 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 24 hours a day, rowing 12 hours a day each for the entire duration, which is almost 3 months. Now this here was actually our only form of shelter, and it's about the size of the bathtub, and it was about as wet as the bathtub. So imagine living in the bathtub with your partner for 3 months. It didn't end well. It was an honor to be able to represent Canada on an international stage, where at the time I became the youngest woman in history to complete this feat. It surprises some people to hear that to date, my biggest fear is being in water. Anybody who's here tonight that knows me really well is laughing, because I don't even like getting my hair wet. And at the time, this was something that people told me was impossible. And since it's been said that I'm fearless, and I always find that funny because fear has been a big part of my journey, and it's been my relationship to fear that has allowed me to achieve overcoming moments of limitations, not the lack of fear experienced along the way. The hardest part about doing anything is just getting to the start line. It's getting over the initial voice of fear. Is taking that first step and really effectively just showing up for yourself. And it was no different for me. Shortly after I committed, I realized that this was going to cost $150,000. Now, I was a personal shopper and I made minimum wage, so it might as well have been $1 million. But I made a decision that I wasn't going to allow money, debt, there was a lot of consequences, or really anything hold me back from my dream. And so I did what I could, is I put one foot in front of the other, and I went into company after company, and I was honest. I didn't lie. I was 21. I'm a personal shopper. I have a pretty average athletic background. I played volleyball in high school. I'm from the prairies, so the ocean rowing experience is fairly limited. And, I've never rowed a day in my life. Didn't row a day before, and frankly, I haven't rowed a day since. And I was standing there declaring that I wanted to take on one of the toughest endurance races in the entire world. So you can imagine I was met mostly with humor. A lot of people thought this was a joke. Some were not so kind. But the overall, people didn't jump to sign up for me to kill myself because apparently this wasn't good for publicity. But like in anything, overcoming adversity, a huge part of that is just being persistent. Enough no's brought me to a yes, and the key to that is I held on to the end goal. They didn't need to know what I was doing. I knew. I saw myself the moment that I committed to doing this. I don't know how, but I saw myself crossing that finish line, and I held on to that like a lifeline. And I recognized early on it's the unknown that inspires fear within all of us. And most just couldn't see the vision. And I protected my dreams from doubters by having clarity in the end goal, and I believe this to be the secret. If you know where you're rowing to, you will get there. Clarity is what defeats fear because it's options. At sea, I wasn't facing bankers, I wasn't facing doubters, I was facing the ultimate judge, Mother Nature. And she was fierce, and her infinity was overwhelming. Comprehending that I was one small drop in the world's biggest bucket was completely overwhelming. And as a human, it is so humbling to know that your life is not in your hands. And so I did what we've been doing for hundreds of years. I created rules and regulations, and this gave clarity. And we created rules of safety out of the ocean's chaos. And it was a treaty. We humanized her to deal with her, to emotionally cope with her. And so one of the rules that we had is that we would never pollute. Not one thing that wasn't natural went into that water. And we felt that this was a peace offering. If we respected her, in turn, she would respect us, and she would allow us to pass in safe passage. And we were so superstitious about this. And on one particular day, Paul is bailing water into the boat with her bucket, and a little wave hits the bucket, and he drops the bucket. Okay, so it's like the bucket is floating away. We had another rule that we never swam away from the boat. And the reason why we never swam away from the boat is the currents were so strong that if you got too far and you weren't able to swim back, your partner would never be able to turn the boat around to get you, and you'd have to watch your partner drown. So we never, ever swam away from the boat. In this moment, if you're with me, this is like the scene out of Castaway where like Wilson is floating away. Paul and I contemplated jumping in the water to save the life of this bucket. Clearly, it wasn't about a bucket. It was about the loss of hope. It was about the recognition that we had broken the treaty with our environment, and this was our emotional safeguard. We believed that this protected us. Anything that's happening in your life, it's happening in the top 2 inches. It's your relationship to what's going on, and this was a defining and breaking moment for us. How do you row across the Atlantic at 120 pounds, 5'2"? The only thing that I had that the others didn't was that I believed that I could. And in this moment, we were broken. And we believed that for the first time, we might not make it. So if you think that fear is something that nobody is immune to, we're all going to experience it, then it would make sense to me to prepare for it. Paul and I didn't know what we were going to face at sea. But we knew that we would face challenges, and in anything, it's being prepared for adversity that I believe to be the key. So we went to our friends and our family, and we asked for letters of encouragement and letters of hope and the question is, who lifts you up when you fall? Who do you lean against when you don't think that you can stand? Who's your tribe? We have so much more than we can draw on in any given moment, and if you're committed to pushing beyond your capacity, then you have to be prepared to fail and fall. So how have you protected yourself and sustained holding on to your end vision when you lose it? And that's your tribe, that's your people, your community. So one of the ways that we dealt with this is with these letters from our friends and family. And so after the loss of the bucket was torn from us and our sense of safety, my personal darkest moment came. I started my shift like any shift. I got the knock on the cabin door, and you'd slowly peel your fingers open one by one, your body just constantly seizing all the time. And then I put my salt-encrusted wet chamois over my open, chafed sores. And as I was leaving the boat, here was a tile that we looked at every day, and I had no idea how relevant it would become on this day. And it said, "The difficult you do immediately, the impossible takes a little longer." And as I sat down, and I started to go up my 50-foot swell, which is about a 5-story building. And it's the feeling of driving a car up a hill in San Francisco. And as I got to the top, it curled over my 6-foot cabin, and it was the feeling of a wild animal jumping at your face. And it lifted me off the seat, and I hit the side of the boat, and next thing you know, I have the pressure of a 50-foot wave and my 1-ton boat effectively coming down on top of me. It's not a good situation. I find myself, Paul is pulling me into the cabin, and I knew I was in trouble. And for a moment, I couldn't see options. I had over 1,000 nautical miles to row to the finish line. We had no help, no medical, and this seeming like an optionless moment. What are we going to do? And Paul knew this was the time to bring my person, the person who lifts me up, and the person that I lean on in my dark times, my dad. If I can get through this, I would like to read a small piece of the letter that Paul gave to me, if I can keep it together. Yes, you are the master of your destiny. Some stinky old beer-drinking biker said that. Don't know why, just that some beautiful, bright-eyed little girl needed a little help to nudge her on her way to create and live a life only others could hope to read about and make their most secret dreams of. Don't worry, you'll always be my little girl. P.S. Be nice to the Irish fella. You might have to eat him. He's quite funny. So now, with the encouragement from my dad, and knowing that my dad was on board with me, I was able to see my options. And I knew that I had two options. I could not row, and the consequences, it was going to take longer to get to the other side. Or I could continue to row, and I was going to have to take the consequence of dealing with the pain I was going to have to face. So I got back on the horse, per se, and I started to row, and it was so painful, I cannot articulate to you, that I was just puking all over myself. And my dad's words came to me, and so I started to recite, push through the pain, face the fear, you're a Viking to Valhalla and back. Push through the pain, face the fear, you're a Viking to Valhalla and back. And I would literally feel myself lifting out of my body, and I'd sort of hover on the right side of my body, and it would take me 15 minutes, and I would disconnect from the pain. And I continued to row my 2-hour shifts every other 2 hours for 24 hours for the next 1,000 nautical miles. And when it was completely overwhelming and seemingly impossible, I took it and I broke it down into bite-sized pieces of difficult. So sometimes all I felt that I could deal with was a day. I said, Tori, today I can get through this. And sometimes I could only get through 2 hours, and sometimes only 15 minutes. And any time that we're facing any sort of adversity, it's breaking it down into bite-sized pieces that you can handle. So my dad and I rowed to the finish line. And as I stepped on land, I realized really quickly that fearing fear is wasted energy. And that fear is a part of life, and if we prepare ourselves with the support of our community, with the belief in the power of your mind, and setting yourself up for success, there's pretty much nothing that you can't get through. The greatest gift for me that came at sea is I realized that it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be scared, and it doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. So be confident, and if you can't be confident, then dance somewhere in the middle and hold your head up high and sit with fear in whatever capacity that you can, but work on it. And I can't be fearless and achieve the impossible, so I commit to living on the edge of my capacity as often as possible.